Dick wanted this to be a happy occasion. And so that is what it is going to be for us today. So even as we arrive with hearts that are heavy, how could they not be with the loss of someone like Dick Bond? Even with our hearts heavy, may we come together today in a spirit of joy and gratitude. And to help set the mood, Dick wanted us to play some music in the happy style of Rotary songs that he liked to lead. If you look through your bulletin, you might be able to pick out which songs those are. Dick also wanted today to be an invitation into service for those of us who have gathered to celebrate his life. Dick exemplified the Rotarian motto of service above self. And so it is good for us to keep in mind that as we remember Dick today, we are reminded that one of the best ways that we can embody his spirit is by committing ourselves into service for our community and those around us. And so as Dick wanted, let our time of remembrance be a happy occasion today, a happy occasion to give thanks for the life of this remarkable man. And so zippity-doo-dah, zippity-day. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Let us pray. Oh, holy God, we gather on this most sacred of occasions. We've gathered from near and far. We have gathered from so many different organizations and ways in which Dick was involved in our community. We have gathered to remember a man who was so dearly beloved by all of us. Oh God, this time, we pray, would be an opportunity to both say goodbye and also say thank you. Thank you to one who was a husband of 77 years, a loving and tender father, a strong and fierce advocate for good, a generous philanthropist, a grandfather and a great-grandfather whose warm touch and whose hugs brought great comfort and peace, a friend to so many, one who has changed the lives of countless students. God, there is endless ways in which we are grateful today. May you help us as we gather in this time of loss to be reminded of the goodness that has been sown into the world by the life of Dick Bond, your servant, a gift to each one of us. We offer these prayers, O Lord, in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our responsive call to worship today. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will our help come? Our help comes from the Lord. God will not let your foot be moved.
God will keep you, will not slumber.
God,
will make you slumber and sleep.
the Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand.
The sun shall not strike us by day, nor the moon by night.
The Lord will keep you from all evil.
God is the keeper of our lives. May God keep our going out and our coming in from this time on and forevermore.
Please be seated. And as you may have guessed, this is one of the happy Rotarian songs that we will be listening to now.
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark up above, and the sun's in my heart, and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place. Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face. I'll walk down the lane with a happy refrain, just singing, singing in the rain. Dancing in the rain. I'm happy again. I'm singing and dancing in the rain. Dancing and singing in the rain.
Our first scripture reading today comes from 1 John. Beloved, let us love one another, because love is from God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. Beloved, since God loved us so much, we ought to love one another. No one has ever seen God, but if we love one another, God abides in us, and God's love is made perfect in us. God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Our second reading comes from James chapter 3. Who is wise and knowledgeable among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. And the wisdom that is from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Here ends our readings for today. So there is no concise or simple way to even scratch the surface of Dick's nearly 96 years of life today. Mike sent me a digital copy of Dick's autobiography, Hills to Mountains. When Mike sent it to me, he warned me that it was lengthy. And I opened up the file, and once my computer had finished downloading it, 166 pages. I looked through the table of contents and found that the very last section was titled, What It All Means. I thought this was a good place to start. I figured as a biologist, this section would maybe serve a bit like the abstract to a research paper that Dick had written, providing a summary of the rest of what is to follow. And so I scrolled to the end of 166 pages, and I realized I must have missed something in Mike's email. And I went back to Mike's email and found that he had told me, this contains only a portion of my father's autobiography. The 166 pages was up until the time right before he arrived at UNC. Though 166 pages is more than most people need to write their life story, it is understandable that Dick needed more pages than that. Everyone's life has interesting elements to it. And though likely his modesty would lead him to object to the statement I am going to make, I'm going to make it anyways. Dick's life was more interesting than most people's lives. And I think we can agree on that here. Now, certainly Dick did not leave West Virginia with the purpose of doing things to make his life more interesting or more important than other people's lives. Nothing could be further from the case. What makes Dick's story so compelling is that he achieved all he did while living a life of humility, of honesty, of integrity. A life that was devoted to the good of others. Now, taking that high road is, of course, a fine thing to aspire to. However, there is nearly always a point in one's journey when they realize, the low road is really how I get ahead. But taking the low road was never an option for Dick Bond. He was a man of uncompromising character who did what he knew was right, whether the people around him liked it or not. As our reading from the book of James says, "Who is wise among you? Well, let them show by their good life, being peaceable and gentle, without partiality or hypocrisy." There is no question that Dick possessed a great deal of wisdom in the more traditional sense of that word. Not only did he have a superlative academic resume, he also showed an uncanny aptitude for things far outside of his field of zoology. An aptitude for areas like administration and business, politics, and philanthropy. But Dick's wisdom went far beyond his intellect. One of the things that made Dick so unique was that he so clearly had this heart-centered wisdom spoken of in our reading from James. And it was something that was experienced by people in all circles of his life, his family, his friends, his colleagues, those who agreed with him and those who didn't agree with him. He undoubtedly had occasion to spend time with both as a college president and a state legislator. And Dick didn't just treat people with respect and dignity if they were on his same social or professional status. The Apostle Paul writes in the book of Ephesians, "Do not think of oneself as better than others." We probably all saw examples of Dick embodying this principle of humility in all sorts of ways, including in seemingly small things that he did so naturally, like how important it was to Dick to remember people's names. While Dave was going to UNC, one of his friends came up to him astonished. Dave's friend, also a student at UNC at the time, said to Dave, "I met your dad once, and he remembered my name." Along with this principle of humility, the Apostle Paul also says to be patient with each other. When I recently met with Mike and Dave and Josette, all of them attested that their dad never yelled. Now, that doesn't mean there weren't consequences to their actions growing up. Dick and Reva held their children to the highest standard, a standard that Dick and Reva's parents had held them to when they were children. And the worst possible thing I am told that a Bond kid could hear was that their father was disappointed in them. He was disappointed in them. And the most dreaded punishment? Having to tell their dad what they did. Josette recalls coming home one day and telling her mom of something that had happened at school. Dick was out in the back gardening, and Reva told Josette, "Well, you're just going to have to go outside and tell your dad yourself." And Josette said that walk to the garden was the longest walk of her life. Or there were moments of disappointment for Dick, possibly. there was nothing that Dick was prouder of than his children. Dick had such admiration. He spoke of this regularly when we would visit. He had such admiration for the people that his children became as they grew up. And true to form, this had nothing to do with social status or professional achievements. It had everything to do for Dick with seeing the type of people his children were: kind, compassionate, family-oriented, community-minded. People that were reflections, well, of Dick and Reva, right? And these attributes were not the only thing that Dick passed along to his children. There were some very practical things as well, like principles for how one should structure their personal finances. This is probably a good thing for all of us, maybe, to hear from Dick. Save 10% of your salary. And save any raises or bonuses that you get. Mike said that when Dick was president at UNC, they were still living on the salary level that he had earned much earlier in his career when he was a teacher. The financial discipline that Dick both practiced and passed on to his children was certainly not for the case of hoarding money, or so that at some point down the road he could spend lavishly on himself. Up until a few days before Dick's passing, he was still checking his emails and reading numerous newspapers and publications online daily. And he was doing this on his new computer, a 12-year-old Mac that Josette had to go to battle with to rescue documents from. So let's just say Dick was not about spending money on himself, but he was about giving money to others. A man of extraordinary generosity. Another financial principle that Dick believed in was to share half of your wealth with your family and half of your wealth with others. It was this principle that led Dick and Reva to establish the Bond Family Foundation in 1995. Dick spoke of how one's life is going to end, but that doesn't mean their impact can't continue. And the Bond Family Foundation is just one of many ways that Dick's impact and influence will continue to be felt in our community for countless years to come. So along with the many things that Dick taught his kids, he also instilled in them a love for travel. When I asked Mike and Josette and Dave, so, where all did Dick travel? Where all did Dick and Reva travel? And they said, well, on which continent do you want to know? Boy, for a boy born in Lost Creek, West Virginia during the Depression, gosh, he sure saw a lot of the world, didn't he? And for Dick and for Reva, travel was about much more than tourism. It was about experiencing and learning from cultures that were different from their own. This was a lifelong commitment that he and Reva both shared. And so even in retirement, you were much more likely to see them on a home exchange program or an elder hostel trip than you were to see them on a cruise. When Dick and Reva could no longer travel themselves, they continued to travel vicariously through their children and their grandchildren. Dick would often ask for the itinerary before a child or grandchild would leave on a trip, and then from a distance, he would delight in being their traveling companion. Whether his kids and grandkids were traveling or living near or far, there was nothing more important to Dick and Reva than remaining close to their family, continuing to build and strengthen relationships with these people that were at the center of their lives, being an active and engaged part of their lives. And though it may not be what is spoken of first when people remember Dick Bond's legacy, the relationships that he developed with his children and grandchildren, they are likely the accomplishment that he would place at the top of his list. And because of this, I don't think there could have been a better way for Dick to spend his final moments of life here with us. He was surrounded by Dave and Karen, Josette, Mike, and Judy, in his room with Reva. And he was hearing them share memories, laughing joyfully in conversation with each other. These beloved people in Dick's life, deeply connected to each other, deeply committed to the principles that he had built his life upon. What a fitting conclusion to the story of Dick Bond's life. One that undoubtedly left him feeling great hope for what the future had in store for those who get to carry on his legacy. Amen. I invite you to rise as we sing together.
Good morning. I'm Greg Pearson. I've known Dick and Reva since 1977 when I was hired as a teacher and a coach at the UNC Laboratory School. And since that time, Dick and I have worked on many projects together. You probably have been involved like I have with Dick. He would come and grab you by the arm and say, come on, we're going to go do this project. You couldn't say no. He just said, let's go. Let's tell me what you need us to do, and we will work on that project together. And our latest projects have been things like moving the UNC Laboratory School from campus out to its new site, and the development and opening of Salida del Sol Academy. So those were some of the projects that I've enjoyed working with Dick on through the years. In the spring, Dick was honored at the WD4 Gala, and he asked if I would make some remarks about his career, his educational career. And I told him I would be honored to do so. And when the family asked me if I would make some remarks today, I find it only fitting to go back to those same remarks and make some of those remarks again today about Dick's fabulous career as an educator. So if you were at that gala, bear with me, you'll hear some of those same things again. One would surmise that it would be a relatively effortless task to speak about the educational career of Dr. Richard Bond, but not so. Dick Bond had an extraordinary impact upon the field of education. I hope that I can do justice to his exceptional works. I can sincerely describe Dick Bond as a passionate and kind leader. He was a mentor and an educational teammate to many of us. We all know someone who comes into our lives, has a profound influence upon us, enriches our experiences, and makes us all better persons. I believe I can speak for everyone here today and say that special someone who touched all of us was Dick Bond. I will trace Dick's career from a young biology and zoology professor to a seasoned college administrator, state legislator, and educational activist. And, as Sinatra so beautifully sang, Dick did it his way. Dick earned his bachelor's and master's degrees in his home state of West Virginia. He was awarded a PhD in zoology from the University of Wisconsin. He intended to spend his career teaching at the college level. But early in his teaching career, Dick was handed the opportunity to study and to prepare for higher education administration. Dick became a university administrator and held positions at Elmira College in New York and the University of Liberia in Africa. In the late 1960s, Dick accepted an administrative position as an academic vice president at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois. Dick discovered there was a lack of student diversity at Illinois State, and there were no minority faculty members. Dick was an advocate for diversity and hired the first black faculty member in the history of the university. Over a 5-year period, he recruited minority students from Chicago and East St. Louis, and to accommodate this more diverse student population, Dick and his team hired 21 additional faculty members, many of whom were persons of color. While at Illinois State, Dick initiated a student exchange program with 4 other universities, with the purpose of which was to add to the experience of cultural differences to the students' educational experience. The exchange program expanded to 8 universities and subsequently became the National Student Exchange, involving more than 2,000 students annually. And since its inception, it has affected the lives of over 100,000 students. Dick has stated, "I'm extremely proud of the National Student Exchange, and I consider it my most significant contribution to higher education." In 1971, Dick accepted the position of president of the University of Northern Colorado. In his inaugural address, Dick stated his goals for the university as to ensure that UNC be a teaching university with students as its primary focus, to create a liberal arts community atmosphere, and to increase diversity and expand opportunities for all students. College campuses in the 1970s were faced with upheaval and weekly student protests. I was one of them. UNC was no different. A group of students challenged Dick as to his racial attitudes. Dick asked the students to check out his record working with students and faculty at Illinois State University. The student leaders did so and reported back that Dick was known in Normal, Illinois as the blankety blank blank who integrated our town. Now, I can't say those words that Dick filled me in with since we're in church. They were a little colorful about who integrated Normal, Illinois. A label that Dick told me that he always cherished. Upon hearing this report from their fellow students, any concerns they had about President Bond was quickly dissipated. While president of UNC, Dick established a student-oriented culture by establishing departments of Mexican American Studies, African American Studies, Women's Studies, and delivered an important message of inclusion in the naming of buildings. To honor scholarship, Michener Library was named after a distinguished former faculty member, James Michener. To recognize cultural diversity, Candelaria Hall was named after Martin Candelaria, the first Latino faculty member hired at UNC. And Gunderson Hall was named for a former cook, to honor by reference the usually unrecognized service staff at the university level. Dick was proud that during his tenure at UNC, he pioneered an academic delivery program to teach courses off campus. This was very controversial at the time, but now it's a very common practice in education. Dick believed that 10 years was an adequate amount of time to serve as the president of any university. And in 1981, he resigned as president of UNC and turned his attention to state government. Dick served 3 terms in the Colorado legislature. Dick told me he was proud of his anti-tobacco legislation and related health care bills, but he was most proud of his education legislation. Dick authored the Post-Secondary Options Act, which enables students to enroll in college coursework while still in high school. Today, hundreds of high school students across the state take advantage of this program. And like many of you may have had children and grandchildren who have taken advantage of the Post-Secondary Options Act. Dick is probably the only person to serve as president of 3 Colorado colleges. In 1991, he was recruited to serve as the interim president at Front Range Community College in Fort Collins. Later, that same year, he was asked to go to Morgan Community College in Fort Morgan, where he served for 5 years. While in Morgan Community College, Dick established a program which enabled high school students to earn their high school diploma while simultaneously completing their associate's degree from Morgan Community College. Today, this program is widely copied across the state. After Dick's presidency at Morgan Community College, he returned to Greeley and immediately became involved in local education issues. Case in point, Dick was one of 6 founding members of the Greeley Dream Team, which encourages high school students to stay in school and plan for college. This organization serves more than 1,800 students annually. In 2001, the UNC Laboratory School was preparing to move from campus to its current location. Dick and fellow UNC administrators, Bruce Broderius, Frank Lakin, saw a need to establish a foundation for the purpose of securing funding for the new school. Dick, Bruce, and Frank raised approximately $2 million for the new school, for furnishings, technology, and teaching materials. For many years, Dick served as president of the University Schools Foundation, and he served 2 terms on the University Schools Board of Directors. Dick was also a founding board member for the Poudre Heritage Area and served as a board member and advocate for the Poudre Learning Center. To support and enhance science education at the elementary school level, Dick and his family established the Bond Institute for Elementary Science Teachers. The Institute has founded dozens of local elementary science teachers in their pursuit of expanding their knowledge in science education and pedagogy. In 2011, Dick became frustrated by the fact that the existing Greeley charter schools were all located on the west side of town. He penned an op-ed for the Greeley Tribune in which he offered suggestions for opening an east side charter school. When no responses came forward, Dick decided to take the matter into his own hands. Dick phoned Tom Roach and me and asked us to meet with him and discuss the establishment of an east side charter school. After several meetings, we decided to pursue Dick's vision for such a school. We began to search for a site and recruited others to assist with the development of a charter school in East Greeley. After 2 years of development, which included Dick raising $1.5 million for the initial opening cost, ground was broken in February of 2014 for Salida del Sol Academy, the only K-8 dual language school located in Will County. In September of 2014, 700 students entered the dual language academy. Dick remained involved with the school as a member of the school's board of directors and was chair of the school foundation. And Dick said many times that the main purpose and goal, he wanted students to be literate in both English and Spanish. 2 years ago, Sunrise Clinic opened a branch health facility at Salida del Sol Academy. The clinic is appropriately named after the founding father and mother of the school. The clinic is named the Dick and Reva Bond Children's Clinic at Salida del Sol Academy. I can personally attest to the fact that Dick considered Salida del Sol Academy one of his most important contributions to education. For the past 52 years, Dr. Richard Bond has been a driving force in the evolution of education in Greeley and the state and around the nation. While working with Dick, I have often heard him say, "If you have a dream, pursue it." Decency and passion define Dick Bond in his approach to family, life, teaching, scholarship, and politics. Dick Wood and I had standing coffee meetings with Dr. Bond. We're going to miss those moments of our conversations and philosophical discussions with our beloved mentor. When Dick and I were searching for sites to locate Salida del Sol Academy, we drove every street from 8th Avenue east as far as we could go, probably to Kersey, many times trying to find a site to locate the school. And on one of those occasions, I don't know why, we discussed poetry. Because Dick was an appreciated poetry and liked poetry, and we were talking about the poets we liked and some of the poetry that we enjoyed. So, in closing, I wish to paraphrase a few lines from a favorite poet of mine, and I think Rudyard Kipling would approve. If you can walk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving moment with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then you'll be a man like Dick Bond, my son. Thank you.
Well, what a life indeed. I'm glad that I was able to share and see a small part of it. My name is Kenton Kuhn. I was involved in student government at UNC from 1974 to 1978, and I was invited to speak with some remarks from a student perspective. So all of these student activities, the programming and entertainment department, the campus newspaper, which was called The Mirror, and the student government were all on the second floor of the University Center. And occasionally the Associated Student Secretary would come down and find one of us and would say, "Dr. Bond is on the phone for you." Well, that put a little zippity in your step and was a point of pride in the rivalries that often existed. And I'm not saying that some of my colleagues paid that secretary to run down the hall and say that he was on the phone for them when he really wasn't, but I'm not saying that they didn't either. The great thing about such a phone call was, or a meeting, was that they weren't perfunctory in nature at all. He was always listening and cared about what you had to say. Because of the individual concern that he expressed in those meetings and the esteem that we held him in, some of us organized a roast of Dr. Bond that took place on November 29, 1976. We held a dinner at the University Center, and about 60 folks from different parts of the university showed up. As an aside, a full dinner back then was $6. Everyone at the time knew of Dr. Bond's penchant for bow ties. I'd be surprised if there was a day that he didn't wear one, at least at work. And mine today is a homage to his style, as several others are as well. One of our roasters, Don Paul Benjamin, was wearing a very tiny bow tie. He said that he didn't actually have one and that Dr. Bond had given him this particular one, and it was the one that he wore in the shower. Other great lines did ensue, but for some of them you'd have to say you had to be there. But he was very taken with that roast, and he called President Rautenstrauss at the University of Colorado the next day to tell him about it, and he wished that it had been recorded, and I do too. We were able to interact with Dr. Bond and the executive staff back then in ways that would probably be frowned upon now. For example, several times throughout the year, we would have a poker game. Some of the administrators would delight in showing a check that they received from a student who had lost, which was sometimes me, to pay their losses. We never got a check from Dr. Bond, as he was very cautious, but he never got to show one of ours either. I think, as some of the younger people would say, poker wasn't his jam, but he was a darn good sport. But more important than the money that was changed hands, there was the camaraderie and the give and take of information and advice. That was always very meaningful. He was also a good sport even when it came to discussing a policy or legislation. There were several foils back in the day. The chancellor at DU was very dismissive. Colorado Commission on Higher Education was also a foil. But he never said a bad word about them, even though he worked very hard to counteract their efforts. During my senior year, I was privileged to meet with him for a full day once a month, and sometimes more. He was often reflective during these meetings, and he did share thoughts on politics and political strategy and such. But his most important advice, which he framed in these exact words, were to find the right spouse, which I eventually did, but which he certainly did, being married to Reva for 77 years. After graduation, we would still stay in touch, and sometimes he was able to come to a party that we would host in the Denver area, or a reunion poker game where he was able to bring $5. And I would sometimes see him at the state capitol, when he was serving in the legislature, but he always had time to say hello. I think more importantly than his words and thoughts to us of students, and when I shared the news of his passing with other students at the time, they all remarked on interactions that they had had with him that many of us didn't even know about, but how meaningful it was for them. I did come up one time and had breakfast. He told me about the Salida del Sol Academy. We got in the car and he drove me out there, and I know that that was a crowning achievement. Starting 6 or 7 years ago, my friends Dave Carter and Sue Nelson Carter, Cynthia Westergaard and Shauna Hilgers, who were all Mirror editors, by the way, and I would come up to visit Dr. Bond in person sometimes once or twice a year. By virtue of being at the Mirror, the student newspaper, their interactions with him were a lot different than mine, but they all report the same respect and thoughtful time that they had with him together. 2 out of those 4 people are here today, and 4 out of 4 are here in spirit. We did switch to Zoom meetings during COVID and sometimes after that as well. In fact, we were planning a visit up here to celebrate his December 1st birthday when Mike told us that he had fallen and would be in rehab for a while. Sadly, that visit didn't happen, but what will live in our hearts and memories, the same as it will for you, are the kind, generous, and loving actions of a great man and a life well lived.
Hello. My name is Sean Blackmer. I married Granddad's favorite and only granddaughter, Kayla. I was fortunate enough to know Granddad for 15 years, and I'm grateful to have had a very humorous relationship with him that entire time. So I thought to honor that, I would share with you all, make you laugh as well. That's what I bring to the table. The first time I really got to meet Granddad. Kayla and I were going to our senior prom together. And I decided, not Kayla, that I was going to wear a bow tie. And so Kayla shared that her granddad frequently wore a bow tie all the time to work, to all kinds of occasions. So we decided I was going to go over there. He could teach me how to do it. But prior to that, my parents had to sit me down and say, Sean, your typical jokes need to go to the side. Be serious. Don't screw this up. Basically was what I got from the message with my parents. So immediately I was nervous and didn't want to go anymore, but went over there. So we go over there, knock on the door, and Granddad was kind of surprised, and Kayla explains, like, we have senior prom coming up. Sean wants to wear a bow tie. Can you please show him how to do it? And he, of course, says, yes, come on in. So we go to the bathroom. He's showing me how to do it. After like 15 minutes, I finally get the hang of it. He gave me a bow tie to wear. I still have it. But before we left the bathroom, I was like, Granddad, why do you like bow ties so much? Like, what's the big deal, basically? And he's like, you know what, Sean? They're great for any occasion, for anything you wear, any occasion, like I said, or with nothing on but a bow tie. So that immediately broke the ice for the next 15 years. And so I just wanted to thank you, Granddad. I always appreciate we made each other laugh every time we saw each other. So, thank you.
Well, I thought I was doing okay until I looked up. Thank you all for being here this morning and celebrating Dad's life with us. It occurred to me that I occasionally go to funeral services or memorial services or celebration, and I don't have a clear grasp of the whole family. So I'm going to briefly introduce Dad's family, and I'll start with, of course, my mom, Reva. And in the order of their appearance, my older brother, Dave, who lives in Reunion, my brother, Phil, who lives in Long Beach, my sister, Josette, who lives in Greeley, and I'm Mike. And Dave's wife, Karen, brought 3 girls into the family, and they also have a son, Brad, together. Phil is Uncle Phil. Josette has a son, Ben, in Greeley, and a daughter, Kayla, in Longmont, and I have 2 boys, my wife, Judy, and I have 2 boys, Zach and Josh, both in Greeley. All the grandkids are married, and there's another generation I didn't go into, but there's a fine line between introducing and confusing. I learned a trick from Dad, who was asked to speak at many memorial services, as you can imagine, all of whom were for close friends. He always apologized to his audience in advance for reading directly from a script, but he knew that doing so would help him maintain his composure. For the same reason, I will extend to you the same apology. When Dad turned 90, my sister Josette gathered a collection of reflections from Dad's kids and grandkids so that he'd be able to pull them out and enjoy them whenever he wanted to. It is this collection from which most of my remarks are drawn. And as I reviewed this collection, there emerged some very common themes, so I hope you'll enjoy a glimpse into Dad's family. Holidays and family gatherings. Our family gatherings are filled with two things: naps and games. After a very satisfying meal, some would retire to the family room or study, pretend to watch football and take a nap, and others would be at the table playing games. And as competitive as we were as kids, Dad usually came out on top in card games. In typical fashion, he would be thoughtful and deliberate about his next play, and his turns would take forever. And it didn't occur to me until much later in life that he was totally slow playing us, which is why he seldom lost. As we grew older and started families of our own, our holiday celebrations were seldom scheduled on the actual holiday. Mom and Dad were adamant that we establish our own family traditions without the artificial pressures that many in-laws place on their adult children by commanding that they actually spend the day of the holiday with them. It made our gatherings so much more joyful. And as the grandkids do, so did the competitive intensity of the games. And now that the grandkids have spouses of their own, it has reached a whole new level. And I'm not sure that's what Dad had in mind, but we'll run with it. By the way, many of you will have heard us talk about our family cabin and what an incredible sanctuary it has been for more than 50 years. There is no better place on earth for naps or games. Our family culture, we are a close family. And we recognize and appreciate that this is unusual these days. Mom and Dad both came from very close families of their own. Dad has a sister still living, and Mom came from a family of 7 kids, 1 sister who is here with us today. Our family culture is rooted in the relationship they had with their own siblings. Even up to a few short years years ago, Mom and Dad would journey back to West Virginia and Pennsylvania for every single year for annual family reunions. We had no cultural example to follow except one in which we were remarkably close to each other. And one of our greatest joys is to see that culture flourish in the next generation. And that cultural expectation reached to his extended family as well. He considered my wife Judy as another daughter, especially meaningful to her since she lost her father at a very, very young age. And when Dave brought his wife Karen and her 3 beautiful daughters into the family, Dad embraced them with the same love and warmth. And when I say embrace, I mean embraced. His hugs were epic. They were vigorous and they were genuine. His grandchildren. There were many, many common themes that all of his grandchildren shared, but each of them had some sort of unique and very special connection with her granddad. For Amber, when she graduated from medical school, he was profoundly honored to be the one to hood her when her doctoral degree was conferred. For Brad, it was having his granddad be a part of their wedding processional at the cabin. For Tanya, she remembers granddad's struggle with a game called Pounce, which is a fast-paced card game that took him completely out of his element, so we could beat him. For Ben, it was traveling to Arcata with Granddad and hiking through the redwoods. For Lindsay, a remarkable and service-filled habitat trip to Costa Rica. For Zach, his undergrad and master's degrees from UNC will always be inextricably tied to his grandfather. Josh, too, graduated from UNC and lived in Bond Hall. But he remembers Granddad customarily reciting a prayer or blessing before holiday meals that would result in a room full of waterworks, including Granddad. For Kayla, when the grandkids were very young and had sleepovers at granddad and grandmom's, she remembers being rewarded with her own room and space since she was the only girl. They all ended up in the same room anyway. And Kayla will also forever remember his biology lessons on scat. And Mom specifically wanted me to share this story. Remember, Dad was a biologist at heart, and on many of our summer family camps, we'd always take a hike or two, and he'd point out all the scat on the trail and launch into the detail of which animal it belonged to and how he knew. In fact, we have some family collages, which you normally hang at the cabin, which you'll see out at the PLC, and in there is a picture of Dad holding scat in his hand, surrounded by the grandkids that are all looking down. Now, the grandkids did not care about the poop, but they all treasured their granddad as a teacher. His wife. Mom will not want me to spend much time on this, but his relationship with Mom is such an anchor in this family that not speaking to it would be criminal. But I'll be brief, Mom. Dad first met Mom at the Seventh-day Baptist Church in Salem when she was a freshman in college and he was a freshman in high school. As Ben said, Dad took an autobiography class, so we have his written word to go on about this occasion. So these are his words. Quote, "Before I was old enough to be in the church choir, it was always gripping to watch the choir members climb the stairs to the loft and identify new faces. I remember as if it were yesterday watching a new blonde college freshman climb those steps. When she turned to face the congregation, I was overwhelmed." Mom did want me to share a story about one of their first dates. One of the things that drew Mom to Dad was that he was so much more polite and mature, and which led her to believe accurately that he had been well raised. And he had been, insomuch that he was taught that a gentleman always takes the outside position on the sidewalk when you're walking with a lady. So on one of their first dates, they were walking through Salem. Ooh, that's my granddaughter. So on one of their first dates, they were walking through Salem, and he started to maneuver behind Mom as they were crossing the street in anticipation of walking on her outside. Mom doesn't recall it being icy, but he slipped. And Mom remembers watching as he fell right next to her and thinking to herself, he's going to take me down with him. And he did. She never had second thoughts about whether he had been well raised. She just questioned his sense of balance for the remainder of their marriage. Their marriage of 77 years has been the foundation for this entire family. We will all be well served to love as deeply and as selflessly as they have. And that love lives on in my generation and the next generation, and so on, and so on. Dad was driven. I've got one more story, and it's about Dad's father, my grandfather, Bappa. It's an important story because I feel like it explains why Dad was so driven to touch lives. Bappa was raised in a farm in rural West Virginia, and after an exceptional high school academic career and brief stint in the Army, he was likely going to return to his agricultural roots. Family lore has it that Bappa was quite literally pulled out of the field by the president of Salem College, who personally persuaded him to enroll and somehow found the resources to house him and pay for his tuition. That simple act of touching one life changed the trajectory of this whole family. And it explains why Dad was so incredibly driven not to leave his mark on the institutions that he led, but to empower and inspire the people he touched to reach and exceed their potential. And he never felt that he had done quite enough. He touched so many lives, including yours. And he always sought out one more life to touch, even to his last days in the hospital, where he genuinely wanted to know his care team and their stories. One of his favorite poems was Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods, and the last verse goes like this. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Always one more life to touch. What message would he want us to walk away with today? At the risk of loosely citing Scripture, Dad fought the good fight, and he finished his race in spectacular fashion. I think he'd ask us, how will we finish ours? As Ben said, Dad led Rotary for a lot of years, and one of his favorite songs was Zippity Doo Dah. So I'd like you all to imagine Dad up here singing and join in. He wouldn't care if you sang poorly, he just wants you to sing enthusiastically. So I hope you honor that.
It happened on one of them zippity-doo-dah days. Now that's the kind of day when you can't open your mouth without a song jump right out of it. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine heading my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth. It's actual. Everything is satisfactory. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. Yes, sir. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
Oh, plenty of sunshine in the way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It's the truth, it's actual. Everything is satisfaction. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, feeling this way. Zoom, 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 Mr. Bluebird's on my shoulder. It is the truth, it's actual. What is that bluebird? Everything is satisfaction. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. Wonderful feeling, wonderful day. It happened on.
Join me now in a spirit of prayer. Oh God, may we go forth from this time of celebration with joy in our hearts, with happiness and gratitude, with a trust that Dick continues to live on with and through us. God, the gifts of Dick's life are too numerable to count, and yet we feel them here and now. The sense of warmth and connection and joy that fill this space is a testament to the life that Dick Bond lived. And so may you direct our path. May you help us write our stories inspired by Dick's story, inspired by a story that was grounded in goodness and love, in warmth and beauty, and in dedication to those around us. Holy One, we leave this space with gratitude and thanksgiving for the beauty of Dick's life. We offer these prayers, O God, in your holy name. Amen. And so, friends, we are invited by Riva and the Bond family to a reception at one of these very special places that Dick Bond had such an impact on, the Poudre Learning Center. And so we hope that you will be able to make it to the Poudre Learning Center for this time of reception and continuing to share memories of Dick Bond. Riva received a letter in the mail from Stowe Whitwer, and it had a quote on it from Ronald Reagan that Riva felt like would be good words for us to conclude our time today with. Wherever a beautiful soul has been, there is a beautiful trail of memories. Is that not so true? Let us go forth holding these beautiful memories close, knowing that they will continue to guide our way, knowing that Dick continues to inspire each one of us. Amen.